this relationship with technology is like, how can we put it in a proper place in our lives personally, maybe society as a whole, so that we're using it to its best ability and not ultimately putting ourselves out of balance or hurting ourselves.
Are you listening?
This is the Rob Scott Show.
Damn.
I mean, really, like, if we're not trying to change the world, what are we doing?
Yeah.
All right. Hello. Welcome to the Rob Scott Show. I am Rob. This is
I'm
Sarah.
Sarah.
Hi, Sarah. How you
I
doing?
like how like 20 or 30 episodes in, we're like starting to introduce both of us now.
Right. Yeah. I guess some people are showing up for the first time, hopefully all the time. Anyway, today, what do we want to talk about?
I think we're going to talk about technology. We started a somewhat interesting, really interesting conversation, then quickly stopped so we could hit record.
Sarah's like, shut up, stop, say it on the podcast. I don't want to hear it right now. And I think, we're always trying to make these as useful as we can. That's sort of the purpose of this, right? We want this to be helpful. I think in our world today, we are seeing a lot of challenges with technology, and technology's helping clearly with quite a few things. And so, but how do we manage that in our personal life? Before that, though, I probably want to back up and talk about technology in a bigger sense, right? The idea of technology being really just the impulse to make things simpler for us, right? This is
Right.
The use of tools, the wheel, right? These innovations that we've come up with way back are the impulse of technology. And so when I personally hear a lot of people being really upset about technology or being worried about technology or doing these different things, especially if we get into AI and crazy things that might be on the very near horizon for us, those are valid concerns in some cases. But, if there's a hatred for technology or a dislike, there is an impulse in us to make things more efficient, right? To use leverage, to figure out ways that a machine could dig a ditch so that we don't have to, so that dangerous things that kill people can be done by technology and automation rather than human life, down in a coal mine, getting buried alive, et cetera. So we're constantly trying to do that. Yet that's often seen in warehouses or over at Amazon as, well, they're just trying to get rid of the people so they don't have to have jobs. And there may be some truth to that, right? The wealthy people may be trying to just make it as streamlined as possible and not, try to keep jobs that may be more expensive for them or whatever. But technology is this thing that is not going to go away because, in a sense, if you look at your day and you're like, well, what's the best way to run my day? That's you trying to figure out, using leverage on your day. It's sort of like, well, I know my attention's strong in the morning and then I'm more exhausted at night. So, and I would say that's that same impulse of applying technology to something, right? So that you can automate it. And then if you actually put in systems and use helper tools, like I use glasses all the time and I've got a heart rate monitor on, and that, there's these things that are augmenting our life in really positive ways. But then we end up in a place where social media right now has the entire world talking at the same time. And we really haven't had a history of doing that for very long, right? And so we're ending up with real potential political challenges because of that, real, challenges of how does globalization happen now? Should it happen? Should we slam back down into nations really heavily, or should we continue to expand and partner and the lines of nations start to blur? And technology is influencing all of that stuff. And so obviously I'm all over the place kind of talking about everything that technology can and may mean. What are you thinking, Sarah, as far as what technology is doing to us?
Yeah, I mean, I always love digging into something with you because I think you always give me a perspective that I don't think about. So I love the idea of just stepping back for a minute and looking at technology overall as a tool to help us, lens in your glasses and, things that monitor our heart rate. I also, being in a different generation of you as well. And I know there's people even younger than me and younger than babies that are like, oh, I know what I know what FaceTime chat is, so I know it's changing really quickly, but just to have that perspective of how it changes our relationships. That's what, for my generation, I think, because most of us were grown when we got technology, in the sense I think of cell phones, smartphones, iPhones, video chat, that kind of thing. we had already learned how to socialize before we got it put in our hands. So I
Yeah.
watched it change. You know, you used to go knock on your friend's door, call your friend's, parents' house or whatever. And then it's like everybody's in your pocket, all your friends all the time. So I watched that kind of change, but I know even younger people like grow up like that's part of their socialization. So I like thinking about it in that aspect too. But there's also kind of a third aspect that I think about it as is, we're populating the planet really quickly. So there's part of us, like you said, as humans, we're just trying to innovate, but also like, I just see like both sides to that. Cause it's like, yes, we have to be efficient to kind of get all the people through, get all the people fed and all the people what they want. And, to get and jobs, but there's people losing jobs. And then also there's like resources that are being used for technology. And so, I already know I love this conversation.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and it's funny because usually we have like a clear. I usually very quickly will figure out kind of what I want to say about something, and we'll see if there's some useful nuggets out of this. I think that we could, on like a personal development tack, we could talk about how do we deal with technology that might be overwhelming to us. There's the problem of bullying with kids, right? And when I was a kid, if you were getting bullied at school, when you got home, you at least maybe could feel safe at home. You didn't get ridiculed at home. Now, if you're being bullied online, it's kind of everywhere all the time. It's endlessly embarrassing, and people could be just making fun of you 24/7. And you just have to choose to either not look, or how do you even deal with that? It's a whole different thing. So I think that there's there's the technology to like potentially get us off this planet. Things that Elon Musk is working on, getting us to Mars and making us interplanetary. Having the ability to escape Earth should we ruin it here, or should an asteroid ruin it here, or whatever, right? There's all these impulses to go, how do we keep surviving? How do we keep making it nicer? How do we keep making it better? I think there's also a trade-off sometimes when if we've automated too much for ourselves, we end up pretty unfulfilled because we're not doing some of the things that in us, like I go work out a lot because I know that moving my body actually makes me feel good, right? It's something, but we've automated to a point where we don't have to be that physical at all. Like we could just literally, eat processed foods and sit and not do much of anything. And that leads some people to not feeling so great about themselves and all that stuff. So this relationship with technology is like, how can we put it in a proper place in our lives personally, maybe society as a whole, so that we're using it to its best ability and not ultimately putting ourselves out of balance or hurting ourselves in any way like that,
Yeah, I mean, that's, definitely what's coming up for me is the idea of moderation.
Mm-hmm.
If we look at it from the personal development lens, is like, it's how do we moderate? And it's going to be different for everyone. I mean, when you said just now, hey, we could sit in a chair and eat processed foods, you could have a whole world. You could be a gamer and you could have a whole online community. You run an online business. So we certainly know that there's, I think another interesting conversation is, the question of can you have real connection without an in-person relationship, which is a newer idea, right? And I think we know that we can. Like, I think we would say that we have deep connections with people we work with. It doesn't mean we're sitting in the same room. That may not be true for everyone, right?
Yeah.
Like it just depends.
There's almost no more room that you and I could put between us in the United States. Like we're almost as far away from each other as we possibly could be. You're on one coast, I'm pretty much on the other coast. And I feel incredibly close to you. Right. And, one of my very best friends.
I mean, Rob can be like, oh, you got a haircut, like, I mean, you look really rested today. Like Rob knows my face better than most people that I see.
That's true. But I have no idea how tall you are. So, she might be like teeny. She could be, I don't know. I have no concept. No, I know how tall you are. But anyway, one of my really good friends lives in the middle of the country too. And so, it really is interesting that we can have intimacy. We can have closeness. It's not the same as physical touch maybe and hugging and there are things like that certainly could be missing when we go away. I want to come back to, because I could get into like AI here. I have all kinds of wonderful ideas about technology. I have a history of being in technology, and automation is really interesting to me. But I love what you said. And so let's dial it into a finer point and maybe talk about like, what is our personal relationship with technology today and what are we doing? And I'll maybe bore people that listen to all of these by saying that I want to bring it back to a constant thing that I keep talking about. And it is the management of our own attention.
Mhm.
right? So
Oh yeah, I think that's key in this conversation
yeah,
in any
yeah.
form.
So, if a normal person's day-to-day life is getting lost in the complexity of how many channels of communication are open to us now, right? So even when email came out, I was like, oh my gosh, I've got so many emails, right? That was like one challenge. Now I can barely look at email because I've got Facebook Messenger and I've got Twitter and I've got, I'm checking my Instagram messages, and there's 1,000 channels, and it's almost like you have to gather those to remember to, like, oh, I've got to, for me being in business, like I have to check all of those, and sort of, some people are choosing to reach out to me on this platform, so I'm in a conversation with them over here. And then, so I don't even get a preference of like what my favorite is, in my personal thing. I'm trying to meet everybody wherever they are, let's say, right? So that alone, just communicating, is pretty complex. But then add like the shopping that we do and waiting for things to come in the mail, and the management of stuff in our life and how that relates to like ordering. I mean, now I'm ordering things from Whole Foods, right? Amazon Prime or whatever it is, and food showing up, 2 hours later, but something from Amazon's coming 2 days later. And I'm trying to remember things I ordered, and did I get everything I paid for? And, we have that kind of insanity that certainly 100 years ago we didn't have, even 20 years ago we didn't have. And so the play at our attention and the places that our attention needs to be, it really starts to look like ADD for people, right? We start to go. I think that ADD, while it certainly can be a real problem for some people, I think it's also an adaptation, as we're seeing more and more of it, to all this potential scattered attention around, right? So this learning a mastery of like detaching, number one, from does this thing really matter? Do I have to be scrolling on Amazon, or I don't use eBay, but maybe people are on eBay or wherever they are online, right? Deep in Reddit somewhere, you find yourself like, wow, I've just burned hours of my time and attention, and I almost didn't even realize I was doing it, right? I was almost like asleep. I got caught just following something. And then we wake up and we go, wow, like I didn't do anything that mattered to me. I feel behind. I feel overwhelmed. I feel, I didn't show up for myself in any way that really mattered. One move there is actually learning, where is my attention? What is my attention doing? And in the moment when you wake up to that, having the ability to break up with what seems really attractive in the moment and come back to presence, maybe putting technology down in the moment, going for a walk, focusing on your breath, making some food for yourself, doing something else,
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you actually said the word, but often what we say that goes along with attention is awareness. And perhaps some of my favorite kind of nuggets that we drop for our listeners here is kind of the breakthrough of like, hey, can you just be aware of what's going on? And so I'll just speak from my end of things as someone who obviously works online and does a lot on a laptop. You were talking about notifications and email. So
Yeah.
I also work another job that's also online. So in addition to, the work notifications, the Asana, the Slack, the emails, the customer service from 2 different jobs, though, with your computer up, and I don't have an iPhone, but if I had an iPhone, my texts are dinging, my FaceTime's going off, my phone's right there. And then when I'm not by my computer, my phone's dinging. And so it's like, and I was also thinking as an introvert, the idea of being kind of alone, isolated in a room and feeling exhausted because your phone, you got 3 phone calls and a text and a FaceTime and a WhatsApp video call. And so I just think and then I think we go to try to do our tasks, right? We were like, well, I need to go to the grocery store. Why am I so exhausted? Why can't I go and figure out what kind of eggs to buy? Why can't I, decide what clothes to put on in the morning? Like the awareness that all this is like happening to most of us, we're, like you said, we're good at managing it because we have to, right? This is just the world we live in. But the awareness of like, that is going on, and that does impact your ability to focus, your ability to stay on track for one task, your ability to hold your attention to the things that matter or even decide what matters. Like it's almost for me just a breakthrough to be like, oh, I need to be aware of where my attention is all day, or that's an option for me to be able to be aware. And then there's kind of like, take my foot off the gas a little bit and be like, okay, maybe I did just sit at my computer all day, but that is still like, I addressed 50,000 things, and just kind of making that mental shift in noticing what's going on. I mean, I think that can be hugely helpful.
So I love it. So let's put let's really highlight awareness there, right? So awareness of where your attention is. I'm going to add to that because I just had a lovely kind of a reconnect call with a past client who we both adore, and he since we'd worked together, he'd taken on a much bigger job. He's doing big things, but the job has gotten very complex and very hectic, and he's in charge of quite a bit, and so he kept taking on more and more and more. His job happens to be in technology, so that's it's also kind of hitting in that space too, but it was him bringing his laptop home at night. It was him bringing his laptop home on the weekends. It was him never feeling like he could kind of disconnect because there were all these requests. And so along with awareness, it's really that ability to hold boundaries for what you value, for what you care about, putting yourself first, right? A lot of times we have these strategies of, boy, I hope they like me. I hope my boss likes me. I hope my employees like me. I hope my customers and clients like me, whatever it is. I hope my partner likes me. And we end up losing our own sense of what really matters to us. And, so notice where maybe in this example, technology might be having you kind of run ragged or whatever. Find the awareness of that, but then have the courage to set and hold boundaries that matter. So one of the things I suggested for that guy was like, how about you take nights and weekends off? Like, what if you just saw what that was like for the next couple of weeks and test that out? And it was, almost like an epiphany for him, which sounds silly because he's a highly intelligent guy. And of course he might have thought of that, but hearing it from outside himself to go, no, like that's important. Right. Because somehow we forget that things like that are important. We actually lose the ability to realize, wow, I need to make myself a priority. I need to hold a boundary here. Right. So I love that. So with this complexity, all the places that our attention can be, try to become aware of when you're getting captured by that, or maybe when you're getting lost in that, and then have the ability to set a boundary for yourself and come back to what really matters to you, which quite often might be time, space, a little bit less pace, and putting relaxation and sleep and things like that ahead of just trying to keep up, because the internet will beat you as far as keeping up. You will not keep up with the internet, right? I'm gonna out my dad. My dad consistently has, 30,000 unread emails in his inbox, right? And I'm trying to get him to understand hey, if you archive them, they still exist. You can still find them, but like, don't keep them in your inbox because but to him, and to me, a lot of it's spam, but it's lists he's signed up for. It's things that he cares about. So he's getting marketing messages and things for different stuff. It's just a huge email inbox full of stuff. To him, he's literally trying to keep up with that, right?
Right.
He's trying to keep up with, there's just going to be more people that can email you, right? They're going to be able to out email you. And if you actually knew how much spam all the email is keeping away, I think it's like 90% of the internet is spam that we're never even seeing. It's just like constant news. And if you just open up to the internet, there's an infinite amount of things to read constantly. If you try to go on YouTube, clearly we'd never be able to keep up with it all. So at what point can we hold a boundary to like, this doesn't matter. I can miss this. I don't have to watch this. I don't have to communicate here. I can take a break. I can move away. That could be really, really helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I love that you said boundaries and values, because to me, boundaries, like it's survival. If you're gonna make it in the world today, with how fast we're progressing, you have to be able to put your phone down. You have to be able to, close your laptop, because I mean, you could be facing a screen 24 hours a day. I mean, it could be like, you could have it awake next to your bed, and every time it dings, the light goes off and you don't sleep. Like, if you don't put in boundaries, you will not, you're not going to make it. I love the values.
I was hanging out with a friend. We were deciding to watch a movie on Netflix, and he was behind me I was on a seat and he was on the couch kind of across the room. And I look back and he's watching another video with earphones in, and watching Netflix, right? Like, he's got two screens rocking. So he was like watching something on YouTube. Like, that's how we often can't even stay with like a TV show or a movie. We feel this impulse, like we've got to pull our phone out. So I would say that that's starting to creep into addiction, right? There's some type of peptide rush that, this next thing, like whether it's an email or a dating app or whatever the heck people are on that are giving you some type of an impulse to go check it, that starts to move toward addiction very, very quickly. And so,
oh, I mean, that's very real. Phone
yeah,
addiction, like not having cell service, not having Wi-Fi, not being able to, I'm
freaking out
yeah,
because you can't,
that's
get to the thing.
very real.
Or like if you lost your phone or if your phone runs out of battery, it's like, like what in the world? If we leave our house by accident without your phone, what's going on there? Now we are offloading memory to the phone. We are I've offloaded some sight function to these glasses, right? So we do use technology in that way. And I don't want to say like, today's world is pretty important to have your phone with you. It's like how we navigate the world and stay safe and can call the police if we need to, and all the different stuff, right? So it's not like you shouldn't feel bad if you're, it's okay to like live with a phone these days. That's what we're all up to. But the panic about it, the inability to be without it, and what I was really thinking about was, watching TV when you're watching TV, right?
Right.
And then like going to bed and having it hit you in the face because you fell asleep, like watching your phone, and then just waking up the next day and that's the first thing you look at, right? Like, can you actually get up, maybe go make coffee or tea for yourself, go have some breakfast, let the day kind of unfold in a maybe a space of non-tech? That might be important for some people to give themselves a little space and a little bit of a boundary around tech.
Well, definitely. And that's why I like that you included values with boundaries. And I just said to you yesterday, I think that like one of my goals this year is to spend more hours on less things. Right. And so, I mean, there's the one side of like, you need to know when to draw the line. You need to know when it's time for sleeping. It's time to sit and have dinner with your family, put the phone away. The other idea is to know like, what's important, because in correlation with managing your attention, right? The more you do it. So like watching two screens, you're probably not helping yourself learn the skill of how to manage your attention, because you're teaching yourself how to split your attention. So the more that you manage your attention and the clearer you are about what matters to you, it's not that, again, like we would never say like, don't use your phone or don't use technology, but like what matters? Like, is it that you need your laptop to write that book that you've always wanted to write? And so can you manage your attention on your computer to shut off the Facebook? Is it that, you're really like deeply into connecting with, I don't know, a friend that lives across the country. So can you shut down your work email while you FaceTime? Like,
yes,
it's if we don't learn the skill to manage our attention, then we won't be able to focus on what matters to us and use the tools that kind of come. And so I know that I'm not doing that as well as I could, which is why one of my goals is to do more hours on less things. Cause it's not that it's not that I'm trying to carve out more time, but it's that I'm like, oh, I'm putting my time in so many places that I've kind of lost, what matters to me and what I want to do. And I think a way to fix that for me is to just, hone in on one thing instead of letting my mind split.
I so love the way you said that, right? It's not to get away from technology necessarily. It is, can you even use technology, but like have your attention be where you want it to be and understand that. And by the way, we talk about managing your attention a lot. This is what we teach people, right? I don't want to just say that and have people go like, how do you do that? Like, I don't know. Like that's, it's what our programs do and stuff. That's what Back to Breath does. That's what Hacking Happy does. That's what the Fundamental Shift Coaching Group does, right? So there are ways that you can get training on what that means tangibly, right? To get
and
better
how to
at
do
that.
it and how to get better.
I've had this impulse to share it. It's just like I am, I feel like I'm walking in Eden, like more and more and more and more. And it's just like there's been this like deep pace change for a while now, where I'm just noticing that like it just slow and a real appreciation of like wherever I am in whatever moment. And there's this way to break up with like I should be somewhere else, right? Or my attention even should be somewhere else. And it's actually just kind of falling in love with wherever you are. And so it ends up looking like walking down the hall and just being like really, really pleased that I'm walking down the hall, right? It is waking up and having a quiet house without even music or a podcast or anything on, and just like really paying attention to like making myself a little coffee and a little bit of breakfast or something. It's like it's the folding of the clothes right out of the dryer, and just being fully okay to be there. And, I've simplified my life down to where I don't have the chaos of little kids running around. I don't have a partner. Like, this is not as easy for everybody else to do.
Sure,
I get
sure.
it.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
And, we all have our different situations with how we're living with people and what's going on and all this different stuff. So, but I really want to point out that this move of mastering your attention, especially as it relates to technology, because we're just in the face of technology all the time now, can be massively valuable to the quality of your life, clearly to the quality of your attention. That's what we're talking about. And when you gain that mastery of attention, you can place it on things that not only feel good, but place it on things that make you productive, that make you doing
Fill
the
you
things.
up.
Yeah, the
Don't
things that
drain
fill
you.
you up, the things that give you the most value. One kind of coaching move that might help that be easier is to really try to structure some of that. So set up goals around it. Let's say you have some phone addiction to the point where, and I'm just going to say, many of you probably are not sleeping as well as you could, right? Because we've got LED light stuff and blue light and, all the different wavelengths that are affecting us longer and differently. And our body's not set to rest. And then we're still watching phone in the bed and all the stuff, right? And then we're like, gosh, I don't know why I can't sleep very well. So, can you set it up where maybe you go to bed and your phone is in a different room and you wake up to a different alarm clock or no alarm clock, and the phone is not the first thing that you look at, right? It's somewhere else charging. I've thought of a product of creating a lockbox for a phone that really locks, and you can sort of put a timer on it. And if you have to get in, you can, but you break the box. Like, you'd have to buy a new one. Like, it's something really at risk, to get in there. But that gives us a little bit of a commitment to maybe some space from that, right? And again, I'm not at all anti-technology, but for some people, especially if it's bordering on addiction, technology addiction is probably closest to like a food addiction. Because if you have an addiction to like heroin or alcohol or substances, you can fully abstain from those. But if you have a food addiction, to sustain yourself, you still have to eat and relate to it a little bit. Technology, you're probably not going to go become Amish, and even the Amish are using some technology these days. So, it's one of those things where if you have a technology addiction, it's closest to a food addiction, because you're still going to have to relate to it a little bit, to get by in the world. And so then what do those boundaries look like, right? Can you set it up that you're going to go work out, and when you work out, you're only going to listen to music? You're not going to also try to learn or be on your phone. I watch young kids at my gym, and they're barely working out. They're barely working out. They're in there. They're all dressed up like they're athletes, and they come in and they're just sitting on their phone. They do like a set and then they leave. And I'm like, you should have just stayed in your apartment. You didn't do anything. Like, there was nothing there. Right. So, anyway, setting up some structured boundaries, like, first 2 hours of the day, maybe I'm not, in your work, saying you're going to have a couple of spots where you're really putting your attention on email, and then you're not going to do it. Maybe saying, hey, no social media during the day, only in this one little window after dinner, whatever it is, right? And so coming up with something like that for yourself can be really, really valuable to give yourself space should you need that.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. And yeah, knowing what matters. I was thinking of, so my partner is a midwife, and she is on call all the time. And so part of being on call is you need to have your phone not only on you, but like loud, right? So in the middle of the night, you can get a phone call. But this isn't a midwife phone. This is just a phone.
Yeah.
So anyone calling, telemarketers, friends, family, it's always on loud. And so part of the solution is we were like, let's get an Apple Watch, because that allows you to get the calls, to get notified, to see what you need to see without putting the email, the social media, the games, always right here. And so, yeah, I mean, that's another kind of solving technology with technology. So it's just like, what tools are available and what matters? Like, it really matters that you're available for your clients, but does it, is it taking away from your life that you're basically then opening yourself up to be available to every single person else in your life all the time?
Yeah.
And managing it like that, because I think we're, and this is maybe a different podcast or something that we would just vibe on endlessly, but I would just say, like, I think we're just at the beginning of all the cool and interesting stuff that we're going to see coming out, and just looking at what we've done and how fast we've done it and where we're going. So like this, really matters. And so you can sit around and be, you can have your thoughts about it, or, swim upstream or whatever, but like having these skills is going to help you going forward. And it's going to be something that I think will be like really necessary, like that will be taught to people in a more public kind of way of how to manage.
Yeah, I hope we get to do that, because it really is, integrating with technology as it expands and as we do get into AI and, machines becoming more intelligent, and what that does to us psychologically, all the different stuff is it's going to be really important. And it's something that I'm constantly thinking about and caring about. For now, to wrap up this idea here, I think that it's important to me to say that technology is actually, it's an impulse in us to make things better, right? And it's always been in us. It's always going to be in us. So I would lovingly suggest we don't hate technology. It just doesn't make sense. There's so much of it that's good. We're everything we look at, really, unless you're literally in the woods, is pretty much technology, right? It's engineering, and it's engines and electricity and all the different stuff that we have just completely become. And it's very important that we understand really how important that is. That said, it's getting to a place where the complexity of it is messing with us psychologically in many ways. And so how can we manage our own psychology around it, which comes back to this fundamental skill that we always talk about, which is managing our attention, which is being aware of your attention, using that awareness to know what your attention is doing, having the ability to then be clear on what matters to you and hold boundaries so that you can protect what matters to you in some way that's really, really useful. And as you do that, you gain agency. Like, that's the key to freedom, right? Freedom is not no attention and just letting your mind go anywhere. That actually leads to a prison of sorts, right? It leads to feeling lost and not being happy and not being fulfilled. Freedom is much more in the defense of what matters to you and getting good at that, so that you can actually feel really, really proud and happy about what's going on and feel like, wow, I actually have the choice to place my attention somewhere and leave it there. I'm going to submit that that's closer to what freedom actually is, but it also allows you to have impact, right? So you really can have freedom and impact together in a way that matters. And technology may be a challenge, but it's an amazing tool, and I think we can get better at using it.
Yeah, definitely. Freedom and impact. That's a dream right there. That's great.
Nice. Cool. All right. Anything else on that?
No, that's great.
Let's wrap it up there. Appreciate you guys. Be kind to yourself and everybody else. Bye-bye.